Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the high-level roundtable
Buenas
on trends,
tardes a
challenges, and
todos.
innovation, new
Muchas
frontiers
gracias
in
y
digital governance.
bienvenidos
Let's
a
get the
esta mesa
housekeeping rules out of the way.
redonda
The
sobre
sessions are so
los
oversubscribed, but now
desafíos
we're live
y las
streaming them, so I hope
innovaciones
everyone in the room
para
is
la
okay
gobernanza
with
digital.
with this conversation being broadcast. So that's one. Number two, because it's being live streamed, and we want to also make sure people have access to the room. If any of you have personal photographers in the room, we request you request them to leave just to make space for other participants from the summit. So now that's out of the way. Welcome again, and thanks to those of you around the table who have agreed to share your perspectives and ideas on the topic. So now in 2011, when OGP was founded, it was one of the key objectives it was founded with is around use of technology to support transparency, accountability, and participation. We've seen a huge growth and use of OGP to build digital platforms, to promote procurement, budgeting, public participation, and overall digital transformation of how government works. However, as we all know, the world is a very, very different place since it was in 2011. And with the evolution of technology, we also see an increase in risks of how that technology is being misused. For those of you who were here in the opening plenary, you would have heard the Prime Minister of Estonia talk about the need to strengthen democracy and take care of democracy as a constant project, but also the role of open and free digital realm in support of that. So we hope that today's roundtable will continue that conversation and give some ideas to those of us around the table on how we can do this concretely in OGP and beyond. With that, I am delighted to welcome our incoming government co-chair, the Government of Kenya, who will chair the roundtable and will open the roundtable officially. So thanks again.
Thanks so much, Tono. A clap for Tono, please. A clap for Tono. And good afternoon. Good afternoon. You have to say good afternoon because in case I don't give you an opportunity to speak, you said something. Thank you very much. And thank you to the government of Estonia, of course, for hosting an amazing summit. And I'm sure all of us are now refreshed. But I think we're also in the middle of a very interesting time. I think technology is something that many of us were thrusted into during the pandemic, and so technology before that was something of a conversation. Now it is just not a way of life, it is a necessity. And so as we gather in this high-level roundtable on trends, challenges, and innovations, the government of Kenya, for those who do not know, has prioritized digital governance. And it's just not about governance, it's about building safety, it's about security, and also building public trust. And the idea of technology just as an panacea for everything should not be something that should be on our minds, but it should be a way that we begin to understand how we deliver services to the last mile for everybody. The OGP strategy, by now I'm sure you've heard of it so many times, 2023 to 2028, identifies digital transformation and digital governance as a core pillar and emphasizes on inclusive digital transformation. I think inclusivity is a buzzword there. And so inclusivity must also mean that how we build technology to create open societies must be inclusive. And so I think this roundtable really, in many ways, is around big four arcs. So the first arc, of course, is what are these trends and challenges? And I think we had in the opening plenary, or we are seeing as the greatest threats to technology, whether it's misinformation, disinformation, fake news, deep fakes, because of the rise of artificial intelligence, especially generative AI in its current iterations, but also what are those potential solutions. We're just not here to talk about problems. And let's also understand what is happening that we can draw inspiration. Let's also understand the opportunities for collaboration and collective action. We can work as individuals and silos, but I think we are stronger if we work collaboratively. And because none of us has all the answers, and so how do we work together? And I think finally is how do we understand how to leverage on this amazing network with our collective strength and the strategy to deliver digital reforms, of course, online, but has real-world implications offline. With that, let me invite my counterpart from the government of Estonia to make his remarks, and then we can proceed.
Welcome to Estonia again, and we are really happy to see you all here because we just like-minded people, but it also has really practical reasons. Events like this are sort of a good cause or motivation to sort of think a little bit back and get understanding that what has brought us here, and especially in the context that is currently ongoing in the world. And when Estonia regained its independence 30 years ago, we departed with this journey to build up a democratic, rule-based, market economy-oriented country. And we did lay the groundwork mainly in the second half of '90s. And then, yes, it was sort of like a universal understanding that we actually know the solution. We know where the world has to go so that everybody will be happy, that in the end, that every human being can get maximum possibilities for self-realization. And then the world changed very quickly, and some
Quickly, we transition to Natalia to give her responses.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation to give just a few remarks. I've just been a part of the digital transformation high-level panel, so I don't want to over-repeat myself. But I think we come here after 10 years of OGP working and making, creating a methodology where we co-create between governments and civil society organizations. That's the heart of OGP, the collaboration between these overly connected, super important areas of institutions. What I've been thinking about a lot around digital rights has to do with the amount of international regulations that are being discussed right now. Governments actually have people appointed to be part of those international forums, of those international conversations. Civil society organizations are struggling to be able to participate in those forums, and super important regulation around AI, data governance, data sharing frameworks are being discussed without the proper representation of civil society organizations there. And so one of the questions that I've been repeating, and I will keep on repeating, being part of the OGP steering committee and being the ED of the Open Data Charter, is how can we leverage the co-creation methodology that OGP has already established to bring these conversations around international regulations on digital rights to the OGP co-creation process, so that we can guarantee that civil society organizations at least have a word in those processes that then the governments can take to the international forums. So I do think that there's added value there to be met. If we truly want participation to be part of the international forums and the discussion around those regulations, we need to ensure that civil society is being heard, that our concerns are being heard, that our experience is being heard. It's not that civil society has always gotten everything right. There's experience on digital platforms and digital rights, because we've all been working on this for a long, long time. So my call here is, it's actually that question. How can we leverage the experience that OGP has on co-creation and on collaboration to actually bring proper participation into the discussions around regulations on digital rights?
Thank you so much, Natalie. I think we're taking the points down. Now to request my speakers around the roundtable. We have no format or order. If you want to speak, this has been the easiest way for me to see you. So raise your flap, and then so I can see it. We'll keep the interventions very short. We don't have a lot of time. And do not be offended if I cut you short. Are we okay? I see one. Thank you so much. Start with Foundation
for Public Code.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I just wanted to build on the things that have been said so far about the idea that collaboration and regulation are super important, but I think we're now entering an era in which we can do something more proactive than regulate, which is to build infrastructure together. And what our organization does is provide a framework for the collaboration on digital public infrastructure built in the open. And I think that this is a super important way to sort of transmit the idea of normative standards about different ways in which one might do something like financial management or things like this. And so what we've developed is an approach to bringing public administrations together that have built tools. A lot of times governments will build a tool to help them solve something in a digital context, but not be able to sustain that, because it's not a viable financial model to build something on your own. That's why commercial products amortize the cost across their customers. So in order to make an open platform that is also financially sustainable, it has to have partnerships, it has to have collaboration. So the idea of bringing people together into collaborative environments to build digital infrastructure, I think, is a super important possibility going forward.
Thank you so much. But then to tie your 2 points with Natalia, I think the most important thing is also, even as you think about regulation and policies, let's remember that digital is moving very fast. So how we also rethink regulation and the process of regulation in a way that is agile needs to be also in our mindset. And to your point around infrastructure, we also know that a lot of our countries already have legacy infrastructure. So also how we rethink digital public infrastructure in a way that, again, is iterative, so that we are not shackled by legacy infrastructure, but also people like us in our continent, we're not shackled by debt. that also couples legacy infrastructure and debt, and then renewing becomes a challenge. So I think even as you think about Roundtable, we'll be happy to see if we have solutions at the table. United Kingdom.
Great, thank you. And that was a really interesting prompt, Philip. So part of this is around recognizing the importance of having the right conditions in place. So thinking through that whole range of legal, ethical, accountable and transparent, and cybersecurity so safe. So I'll just give one example, because I'm conscious that there's lots of people wanting to speak, around where, I think you're right about the pace at which the technology is evolving and the way that legislation works. Is something that we need to do, I think, is kind of almost a stopgap and recognise we need to have more consistent standards and frameworks. And one of the things that we've been developing with civil society and academic partners over the last 18 to 24 months is a recording standard around algorithmic transparency that we've taken through a development and piloting process. We've had it endorsed by a data standards authority that we run through central government, and now we've rolled that out to all areas of government on an initially voluntary basis. And we're getting some really interesting use cases coming through from areas that are probably think about the handling of quite sensitive data in the health field, in the law enforcement field, but that promotion of kind of a standardized way of being open and accountable about the way that we're using algorithms is, I think, one step that we could take. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the piece, I think, around algorithmic transparency, glad I'm seeing the US raising this up, I think is very much around also the collaboration with private sector, because a lot of this technology actually moves fast from private sector. And so I think this iteration around voluntary engagement so that we can begin to anticipate and preempt before we had code into legislation becomes very important. Let me rush to Monterrey. I can see you. Thank you.
A pleasure to be here. My mayor in Monterrey told me to say, the Estonian government, thank you for the inspiration. He's not listening. Thank you for the inspiration. I was listening about the national project of digital governance in the UK, for example. But what happens if the national government has no guidelines? What can we do from the local government? In Monterrey, we created an innovation and open government secretariat, and in order to go further with this project, we established our legal framework to work with procedures, with data, with transparency, with cybersecurity. And in this context, we developed in 2 years, just 2 years, an electronic single window for all the service procedures that include a digital ID, electronic signature, spatial data infrastructure, inspection and verification model. So it's very difficult from local to national, but to make a sum up, we know what we want to do, we know the aim, but it's very difficult in government how to do it, the roadmap. And I want to listen, I want to share our experience in order to guide many different local governments to make the first step, because it's very, very difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I hope Rudy is somewhere in the room. When I hear OGP local, I think it'll be interesting because I know Nandi also will speak at some point in terms of what they're doing at local. So interesting to connect you, not now. Let me move quickly to SafeNet Indonesia.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think when we speak about policy reform in Southeast Asia context, and for to be specific for Indonesia, I will begin with the situation that the policy or the internet law is already there for quite some time. And in our perspective, the way they regulate the internet is not following the current trend, what's happening in the Europe, for instance. If I speak about the internet law, the ITE law in Indonesia, it's not respecting the digital rights. It's even being used to curb the freedom of expression. That internet is supposed to be creating this online space for people to participate, sending feedbacks to the government, but in the end, the law is being used to curb and then sentence people to jail because of criticizing the government. I think that's one thing that we need to pay attention on the Southeast Asia, including Indonesia, how to lower the risk for judicial harassment towards the activists and human rights defenders. The second thing, I think when we talk about the policy reform, because we learn from the North countries about how to communicate with the private sectors, taking them accountability for their action or their policies. I think that's something that probably Southeast Asia need more a conversation with the civil society on content moderation regulation, that respecting the process. I know that we ask the private sector to accountable, but in the same thing, not to make the private sector doing the self-censorships on the platform, or even like pushing the society or pushing the media to self-censorship on their content just because they are afraid of the big sanction coming from the government. I think on those two areas that we need to be focused on the Southeast Asia, including Indonesia. Thank you.
I think you bring an important point around thinking through how you create legislation, and to Natalia's point, how you include civil society and other communities, especially the public, so that the laws are not retrogressive. But I think there's also a sort of an area where we can also collaborate with the private sector. And as I said, a lot of these technologies are built from private sector, and many of them are built from private sector mindset, which is not necessarily open. And so, to the UK's experience, where you can test these things before you had code them and see how you can iteratively curate it before you had coded it, I think it becomes very interesting. But I think also it's not to separate what you're increasing, seeing the first, second generation of human rights offline with human rights online. And so those principles, I think, should be the overarching guidance in terms of how we develop technologies. Let me move to eGov Academy before I come to the United States. eGov Academy? I couldn't see it. Thank you.
Okay, you can see I am from eGovernance Academy. And this organization is non-governmental center of excellence to assist governments and civil society to advance use of technology for good governance. I have been occupied by our organization already about 18 years ago. My role was to initiate electronic democracy program. Our vision of e-government was that it should be balanced by having attention to citizens as customers of public services, but from the other side, citizens as stakeholders of democracy processes. So, two important pillars of e-government. What is my experience when providing also different services in different countries, that governments are well aware about the use of technology for good services to citizens. But it is not so important for governments also to advance democratic processes in their societies. And I was quite unhappy when I tried to find a point of contact in Estonian government to discuss and to enforce some processes to innovate our democracy using technology. We did a lot of experiments with different platforms, but it is not enough to have a change happen. And then I knew about OGP, and it was like Eureka for me, because it is a platform where you can discuss with your politicians, public sector, about what we need to do to advance democratic processes. And I was especially happy when this start of OGP, the values of OGP, there was also mentioned about using ICT to strengthen democratic principles of the government. But now, in this stage of a new strategy, there is a good vision for future. It is not enough to make commitments piece by piece. We need more strategic approach. And this strategic approach is about how to innovate our democracies. This is not at all an easy task. It's not that we only have a very narrow commitments. I think our commitment should be to localize, to bring it in our home countries, the vision of democracy, which is in the new OGP strategy. I like it very much because there is a starting point, is a rights of citizens, right of everyone to take part in political processes. So I hope that finally we will see the processes we are like participants as a revolutionary process of change management to innovate our democracies, and good success for that.
Thank you so much. Quickly, I think a big point on innovating democracy itself, and technology gives us that opportunity to do that. Let me move to the United States.
Thank you for inviting us to be on this panel today. I'm with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, where we work to harness the power of science, technology, and innovation to achieve America's greatest aspirations and tackle our biggest challenges. On his first day in office, President Biden signed an executive order on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. And he stated that a first step in promoting equity in government action is to gather the data necessary to inform that effort. So with that in mind, we are propagating the principles of what we call equitable data across the US government. Equitable data is about the responsible collection, analysis, and sharing of detailed, disaggregated data about populations and communities, with robust privacy measures, of course, disaggregated data about groups separated by race and ethnicity, gender, geography, sexual orientation, income level, disability status, and other factors are essential for identifying and remediating disparities in how our government serves local communities, particularly those who have been historically underserved and overburdened. One application of disaggregated data is to conduct what we call equity assessments of the impact of digital technologies, so we can make mid-course corrections if those technologies are resulting in some populations being excluded. Having access to that disaggregated data can expose disparities quickly so that we can address them by improving our platforms, processes, and policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the comments on data. And I think in terms of just the foundations of an inclusive digital transformation strategy is data. But I think it's good that we've gone also to more granular. And to my colleagues from Kenya, my PS is here, she always says, what cannot be counted cannot be measured or cannot be visible. So I think data, again, continues to be a very good foundation. And to Natalie, I know you work on the Open Data Charter. I think you need to have a conversation. Let me go quickly to the crowd. Enough of us speaking in the room. Anybody in the room who has felt inspired and want to share a quick 1 minute examples experience outside this roundtable. Outside this roundtable. Anyone?
We can come back.
As you think, we'll come back to you. Or should I say going once, going twice, going... you need to start. I cannot see you. Thank you. There's a roving mic.
Thank you. My name is Tom Bridle. I am with a USAID implementing partner called Comonix. And we do a number of projects that work in different kinds of governance areas around the world, right? And very often it's at that intersection between democracy and digital technology. And very often the challenge for us is to find the right partners at the right level of government, right? And so I would be curious to hear from people around the panel, when you are beginning to engage with government agencies, what are the challenges that you encounter in that? Or the challenges of, the answer could be all of the above, but is it the challenge of capacity? Is it the challenge of the resources from the public sector side? Is it the challenge of the political will? Where do the challenges come from, and how do you figure out what is the entry point on this, right? These are systemic problems with weird feedback loops and all kinds of, they're not just complicated, but complex problems. Where do you find the entry points into those problems?
Thank you so much. I will come again to the crowd, not now. That's not a small question, it's a very big question. And so, yeah, I see you. I hope that the panelists making the interventions will also speak to the questions that has been raised. I think on my part, let me just, abusing the moderator's chair, I think for me the biggest issue is fluency. Just people to understand technology. The terminologies are difficult: digitization, digitalization, digital transformation, AI, artificial intelligence. It's a lot. And so seeing the fluency issue, I think just in terms of people understanding, the capacity to understand, even to speak on the same language, has been the biggest problem. And as I say that, let me go to Canada.
Thank you very much, Mr. Co-Chair, and appreciate the opportunity here. I think we've covered, sort of adapting on the fly to the question here that was posed. The two themes that I wanted to sort of put on the table, which I think get at that actually, are one, the need to be iterative, which we've covered here, as the digital technology changes and evolves. Governance also has to change and evolve equally quickly, and it is not easy to do. The other one that I would underscore for the audience here is interdependency. We have, in the Canadian context, we have a capstone policy on service and digital that covers off service, as the title says, covers off data, covers off open government, covers off cybersecurity. When we did a refresh of our data strategy last year, I talked a lot about the by designs, and they all have to sort of evolve together, right? If you want to be open by design, you have to be private by design, you have to be secure by design, because you can't trust the open piece unless you've actually secured things that need to be secured and made sure that the private stuff needs to stay private. Thank you. I think the challenge with that is that our politics and our political processes, particularly for the creation and updating of laws, in many cases are ancient traditions of how we've done that, and they do not evolve as quickly, and they are not able to be iterative in the same way. So you have to build deadlines that force you to iterate down that. We've done that. We started to do that with some of our laws, but it is difficult to build those triggers in, so that you will have to go back and re-examine in a reasonable period of time in order to keep fresh. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. Nothing to add there. Nandi County.
Thank you very much for according me this opportunity. And thank you for Estonia putting up such a great summit. Allow me to go straight away and share our experience. I represent a sub-national government. Nandi, or rather Kenya, elected to go into the devolved system of government way back in 2010. And we enrolled onto OGP in 2016. And a number of things have happened, a number of policy directions have been given. And I'm happy to report that out of the 47 counties, already we have a number of counties that have enrolled onto Open Governance Partnership, and Nandi is one of them. And our experience has been to sort of like to cascade what has already been developed at the national level And among the areas of innovation that we adopted was to develop and operationalize a call center that enables us to go to the last mile, to engage the citizens at the local level, to be able to access information. They can also report and they can be able to inquire, and particularly to be able to get services that initially would not be easily available if you needed services of an ambulance or an AI attendant, and that's an animal insemination officer. That in itself has given us an edge in enabling our citizens to be more informed about what government is doing. Secondly, when Kenya decided to go the devolved system of government, with power and resources were devolved. And I'm happy to report that in this season, we are now in our third cycle of devolution in Kenya. In this season, Nandi again is one of those counties that are on the forefront in devolving resources further, so that decisions on what priority projects are going to be funded in the next financial year will be decided and prioritized at the ward level. Now, in Nandi, we have 30 wards, and 50% of the development funds are going to be decided at the local level by the citizens themselves. And I see, I don't know whether I'm being heard. Thank you so much. And I see that as in itself one of the ways of enhancing participation, public participation, inclusion. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Deputy Governor. I think you bring a very important point around, and I pick this, that sometimes we think technology is shiny. It's important to think about how you can leverage on across the breadth and tools that we have so that technology actually meets citizens where they are. And I think just having a call center to make a call is very important, especially for a context where we are still very visual and audio. Let me go to Portugal.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for invitation. It's a great pleasure to be here. My first time at the Open Government Partnership. So thank you so much. I think one of the challenges that we all face is that how to maximize the potential of technology and digital technology and state-of-the-art technology, and at the same time trying to minimize the risks and the impacts in terms of citizen rights and guaranteeing that no one is left behind. And so I'm going to give you a small example that how in Portugal we are trying to address this kind of dilemma or to optimize this equation, if I may say. We launched, we approved in Parliament this digital rights letter in a way, and we in a very quick way, even not very collaborative way, we launched as well this responsible AI guide to help public entities to have some guidelines if they want to use this new technology. And in my agency, we are the digital agency of Portugal. We are testing AI and trying to make use of the technology in small pilots, in small interactions, at the same time that we are now in a more collaborative way building a national strategy for AI. But that will take time, and the technology is there, and we want to learn the technology to test its potential. So we are using AI, generative AI, powered by ChatGPT, to have chatbots in our web portal. And now we added another layer. We have a lip sync avatar, so people can talk to a real avatar in their natural language, in Portuguese. And this provides frequently asked questions to some services that are the most demanded in Portugal. And now we are extending it to the immigrants. Portugal has become an immigrant country, and our staff at the call center, at the physical citizen stores don't speak many languages. And now we're using this technology that is available in more than 80 languages so that the immigrants can get some answers in their native language from the technology. I'll leave it here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I was actually talking to Tonu that we probably need to connect you with somebody from the support unit who does the use cases so that we can give it justice and document it so that we can share with everybody. Thank you so much for that example. Moving to Article 19, East Africa.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you to the government of Estonia for organizing this summit. At Article 19, I'm representing an institution that works on two fundamental rights, and that is the right for people to speak and the right for people to know. And obviously, if you're talking about digital governance, I think one overarching thing has come out and is ensuring that you're not leaving people behind and you're not exacerbating inequalities. Just from a panel, actually, on media freedom as a catalyst for open governance and accountability. And what came out is that in as much as we are progressing very much on digital technologies and innovation over the past decade, according to Article 19's Global Expression Report, we have seen a lot of media freedom violations, particularly in the digital space. We've seen media in all their diversity being, harassed, attacked, their rights violated, and especially women, and, in the online spaces. And with these alarming threats, what we also noted is the issue of impunity, particularly for these attacks. Investigating digital attacks has not been done very well. It's an area that needs to be heavily invested. However, we had some really interesting outcomes from that discussion. And one of it was what are countries doing to ensure that they're providing a safe space for citizens to be able to speak and for them to be able to know what are they doing to encourage journalists to be able to do their work. And I think even in the morning, we started with the idea that, democracy is a very fragile fabric and it's easy to be torn. And so without press freedom, then we cannot say that we do have a democratic or legitimate democracies. And I just wanted to highlight what the foreign minister of Estonia actually shared with us. And this was how Estonia is every year issuing 35 digital residency permits to journalists and media at risk who are not able to operate freely in their countries. And this allows them then to be able to do their work without fear of retaliation. And these are some of those innovations that we are trying to encourage to ensure that as we advance, as we deploy these technologies, we ensure that human rights protections are at the fundamental core of whatever solutions we are trying to provide. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you so much. And I think there's a conversation between eGov Estonia, eGov Academy, in terms of innovating democracy. That could be an interesting case study that's from Estonia, can go to the world and see how some of us can begin to adopt that. Let me go to Mongolia as Ghana prepares after Mongolia. You then Ghana.
Thank you so much for this given opportunity to participate in OPG. I'm from Mongolia. I'm the Minister of Digital Development and Communication, which established on 2021, the 1st of January. And it's my second time in Estonia. When I first visited in Estonia 2019, that time that I was working as a chairman of ad hoc committee of digital policy and innovation. At that time, there is no the independent ministry. This is the independent standing committee. And when I first visited in Estonia, we made an agreement with the e-governance academy of Estonia to take consultancy service for the digitalization. And based on that consultancy service, we paid more attention on two different areas. The first one was about legislation. The second one is the infrastructure and the ecosystem in different sectors. After that time, this time I came here the most successfully because, we have an independent ministry and we have the 5 different laws regarding to digital policy. They're called cybersecurity, e-signature, the Public Information Act, Personal Information Protection. The new law is passed by the parliament. And now we are more focusing on the implementation. 3 years ago, we introduced the e-Mongolia, the integrated platform, based on the consultancy service. And when people want to get any public service, they can use that e-Mongolia platform by online without any person. They cannot They don't need to communicate with the personally. They can use by online. And now 3 years ago, it was only 81 public service integrated that platform. Now it's increased day by day. It's now is 1,072 public service integrated to the e-Mongolia platform. It's very useful for us, and public information laws, we designed the 2023, our government announced it as the year to combat corruption and unveiled it to shilin.gov.mn, the new platform. And this platform housing information from 120 public organizations and staggering to 922,000 rows of all data is integrated in that platform. And the policy, the digitalization is very useful. This influences on the reduce the corruption. And in Mongolia is the digitalization is the first goal to against the corruption. And thank you so much, the Estonian government and the e-governance academy. And next few years, we would like to expand our cooperation for that. How do we demonstrate our all data which we selected from the people? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think two key points that I pick. I think that whole issue of how technology can begin to break silos and create integration, but I think there's something I'm listening quietly around interoperability and tied to the UK point around standards, which makes it possible for eGov Estonia to work with Mongolia to create a product that is contextually relevant. I think when you have standards, this kind of becomes a good template to move from. Let me go to Ghana.
Thank you very much. We must say a big thank you to the government of Estonia for inviting us for this conference. Ghana has had a very interesting change in terms of cards. We've been using, every Ghanaian has about 3, 4, 5 different cards for different purposes. We have a card for health, National Health Insurance Card. We have a card for pension, Social Security and Insurance Trust. And we have a card for voting during elections, etc. Now, we recently passed a law which introduced what we call our citizen ID card. And this enables us, it serves almost like a passport. Ghana is surrounded in the east by Togo, on the right by Cote d'Ivoire, and in the north by Burkina Faso. So Ghana is an island, French-speaking countries. And they come to us, pass through Ghana using their guarantee card, which is their ID card. We can't use any of our cards because they have a limitation. Now we pass a law, and now we've introduced the national ID card, which is used through ECOWAS, which enables like a passport. And this has been very useful because it's now being accepted as the only card for banking transactions in the country. And almost everything that is economic, you've got to use your national ID card. And I think it's been very useful because we got it through the OGP concept. And it's something that has been very useful in terms of finance and business. And now it's accepted, and therefore you can use it for traveling, and you can use it for your health, you can use it for... We had difficulty when we tried to synchronize. We decided that all the data on all the other cards should appear on this card, so that this card can be used for voting, and there was resistance, internal resistance from the other authorities of the other cards. But finally, Parliament approved that that is the card that must be used for all these transactions. And it's working so well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Second part, that of course, introducing a new element of digital IDs that is able to provide services in a way that is a little bit different, tied to the US's point around inclusivity. I think that really ensures that people can be inclusive, tied to your point around anti-corruption, having a card, people don't see you, but then you remind us that it is a political process. And so there will still be challenges, but I think to Ghana, it is possible. Happy for you to share how you did it. That practice will be important, especially for many of us who are in Africa, just to learn. Is it for us to do some peer-to-peer exchange in the way that Ghana did it. Many African countries are trying to grapple with digital IDs. Of course, there are conversations around how you delink it from citizenship, but that can be another conversation, especially when we see a practical use case. Let me go to Philippines.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sasa from the Philippines. So I am with the Department of Budget and Management. Philippines is, geographically speaking, is open for collaboration. Like we're right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So, and we are highly archipelagic. And what really differentiates us from the rest of the world is that we have like 42,000 villages, 1,500 municipalities, 82 provinces. So it's really difficult for us to cascade down the policies that we do it from, or we develop from the up, then cascade it from the bottom. And in terms of regulation as well, it's also difficult for us to create policies and regulations and laws that will test through time, like in terms of digitalization or e-governance, because technologies change, and we're looking, we're benchmarking with OGP partners as well, for us to help craft the proper laws, policies that will test through time. And for the Philippines, digital governance is a matter of life and death. We're highly affected by all kinds of calamities, flood, volcano, earthquake, you name it. So it's very important for us to really have a robust policies and execution of digital governance and infrastructure, because now it enables us to properly manage and help warn our citizens whether certain calamities occur. And we're using data science, satellite images for us to help provide provisions, in times of need. We're also testing certain tools like AI and blockchain, of course, for AI. In terms of AI, what's really difficult for us is to solve the problem of indiscriminate disadvantagement, like having the proper algorithmic accountability framework. And this is something that I'm also hammering to our legislators, because we have to have the policies first before we implement, because there might be unintended consequences. And also in blockchain, because of certain dark, what we call it, the ones that are being perpetrated by to AI. So we have to ensure that our documents or any government documents are immutable. So this is something that we're looking at as well. So yeah, we're open for collaboration and hope to see you around.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think you bring an important point, and looking at the UK for this one, to the extent that we talk about algorithmic transparency, but also the bias that sometimes it is innate in how we train the algorithm. So interesting to see that, but I think you also bring an issue of sequencing in terms of how whether you build a policy or you build a law, how do you need to do that in a way that understand that technology changes very quickly. Again, let me go out of this circle to the outer circle. So, okay, we'll take two now. So Alcags already has I see somebody with a microphone, so we'll take and then take you, gender balance.
Thank you so much for this interesting discussion. My name is Shabnam Mojtahedi. I am with the International Center for Not-for-Profit Law. And it's been quite interesting to hear some of the panelists speak about digital governance in terms of governments adopting technologies and providing examples of them doing so, and then other people talking about digital governance in terms of how we regulate technologies to benefit society and reduce harms. And so I kind of wanted to ask a question that falls between these two things and get the panelists' perspective. how, and I'm most interested in how and by what safeguards do governments adopt and develop technology, and bringing in another aspect of OGP, which is open procurement. How to align procurement policies to ensure that adoption of new technologies by the governments are rights-based and also transparent.
Thank you so much. Alcags.
I suppose, well, it works. I'm glad that my brother Philip would see me, because I needed to, one, say this major thing, that standing on the basis of inclusiveness, we have one major challenge where technology is concerned in the investments that we make in our countries. And it's the fact that the internet, which is kind of the base platform upon which a lot of technology works, whether you're talking about e-government services, whether you're talking about all other kind of services that you can get, the internet speaks mainly English. And most of our people, and most of the people represented around this table do not speak English as a first or second language. And so what are the measures that we must take, and what are the measures that our countries are taking to ensure that our various lexicons are brought into the internet, so that then the internet begins to speak our languages?
Thank you so much. I'll just keep to those two for now. The next speaker, if you can answer the questions, that would be good. If you can't, it's fine. We'll come to answer the questions. Let me go to Data Uruguay. Can you answer those questions?
Thanks. Sorry, no, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to answer anything. Sorry. So we've spent the last 10 years trying to separate eGov from OpenGov, so we could actually define OpenGov. But in the way, apparently, we forgot that many of the OpenGov things go through eGov thingies also. And so I'm actually amazed, and building on what you said before, how little have we spoken in the last 10 years of public digital infrastructure, which is the absolute key and the answer to most of the things we have been talking here. We've talked about problems with resiliency. We've talked about problems with innovation, like with the rhythm of innovation or whatever. I think most of those things can be answered by openness plus standards. If you have systems that are open, people can build on them. They can do the new, bright, shiny, trendy thing on them. They can use standards to do that properly and to interoperate. And sometimes trends go by, and that's fine that government didn't use them. You know, you remember blockchain, right? So it's absolutely fine if other people take the risks and do the weird things, and governments just give a stable platform that's on the long term. On the other hand, and I agree with the separation of two topics, we have digital rights, which is a completely different topic, but I also think it's answered by openness. How should we regulate digital rights? Well, let's start by talking about it and agreeing on what should be done. And to be honest, and to finish my intervention, I think it's very important to have this conversation with the recognition that many of the countries that are part of OGP are currently regulating or trying to enforce different laws or trends or whatever that really challenge digital rights. There are currently challenges on encryption, on freedom of speech, on not regulating freedom of speech when it's actually needed on digital platforms and stuff like that. And those governments are present in OGP, are present in this discussion, and we need to acknowledge that to actually have a future of digital governance. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Moving to, I can't see. Quebec, sorry, I couldn't see it.
With the microphone would be good. Thank you first for the government of Estonia to host those two summits, which have been incredible. Seeing what Estonia has accomplished, we are impressed by the progress that has been made by them. And in Quebec, in terms of digital technology, we must accelerate our transformation, and several foundations have been put forward, such as the creation of a ministry about digital and cyber security, which I represent. And we modernize also our legal framework. And we see that one of the important things that we must put in place for the success of our transformation is the importance of integration of the principles of open government in this digital transformation. When our department was created, the open government principles were integrated in our law. So we have the recognitions of our legislative assembly about the importance of those principles. And I would just give an example, and we see when we implement a new project or as such, we always look at those principles. One example in one of our spheres of activities, it's cybersecurity. Collaboration to ensure that the cybersecurity of our critical infrastructures, we must collaborate with all the stakeholders we have, like health, education, our electrical infrastructures. Also the participation. We have an ethical hackers community, a big community in Quebec. So we put in place a bug bounty program. We have a vulnerability reporting platform also. And the principle of transparency is we are a civilian unit dedicated who is in charge of the cybersecurity. So we think it reinforces the population's confidence in the aims, which is to protect the infrastructure, is not to monitor the population. So in short, we really think that our digital transformations involves applying those principles, and also one message, we are open also for collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have 10 minutes, so the next speakers, it's going to be very quick, just 3. Dominican, we'll start with Korea first.
Thank you very much. I'm from South Korea, and I'll tell you about what Korean government is doing about digital governance. And I'll say in Korean, but don't worry, she'll translate. Yeah. 한국 정부는 그동안 전자 정부를 성공적으로 발전시켜 왔습니다.
The Korean government has successfully till now developed an electronic government.
하지만 다른 나라들도 다 그렇겠지만 새로운 사회 문제가 발생하고 있고 국민들의 요구가 점점 더 다양해지고 있습니다.
But I'm sure with other countries as well, we are facing other challenges that are not relevant, might not be very relevant to electronic government, and the public's requests are getting various, and we need to respond to that.
한국 정부는 디지털 플랫폼 정부라는 새로운 국정 과제를 가지고 몇 가지 계획을 추진하고 있습니다.
Our government has very recently adopted a new national level plan, which is the digital platform government.
예, 첫 번째는 정부가 사회 문제를 혼자 해결하려고 하지 않고 시민 단체, 기업과 함께 해결하려고 한다는 것입니다.
The first main pillar of that national level plan is that the government will no longer tries to respond to any challenges alone, but they will rather bring in all of the relevant businesses and all of the relevant civil society members to tackle that challenge together.
이를 위해서 정부가 가진 데이터를 공개하고 정부의 서비스를 민간 서비스를 통해서도 국민들이 이용할 수 있도록 바꾸고 있습니다.
And one of the main techniques that we are trying to do is collect and disclose all of the government data that we have, and also for the citizen, enable the citizens to use private enterprise developed systems and services.
국민들이 정부에게 제안할 것이 있거나 이용할 것이 있으면은 온라인상에서 한 곳에서 모두 이용할 수 있는 원스톱 창구를 더 발전시키고 있습니다.
And also another thing that we're developing is the one-stop service, where if the citizens is requesting or wanting to use a service, they can use it in just a single platform without getting to access various and several platforms.
이 과정에서 중요한 것은 사이버 시큐리티이고 정부는 블록체인 방식 등을 첨단 기술을 활용하여 안전하게 해나가고 있습니다. 이런 과정에서 에스토니아 정부의 엑스로드를 비롯한 디지털 아이디 등 여러 가지 선도적인 사례가 많이 도움이 됐습니다.
And of course, the very important aspect that we are considering while we're processing all of these important plans is ensuring cyber security. And one of the main aspects that we're doing right now is applying blockchain to all of the security systems that we have. And with this, we are very well looking into the cases of Estonia when it comes to X-Road and other state-of-the-art technologies that Estonia has adopted.
OGP를 통해서 앞으로도 다른 나라의 여러 성공 사례를 보고 또 성과를 보면서 한국 정부도 다른 나라의 사례들을 공유해 나가겠습니다. 감사합니다.
And looking and working on the platform of the open government partnership, we are going to listen and learn about the success stories of other successful countries, and we will share our stories when it comes to digital in the digital field. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Korea. Moving very quickly back to back, so the Dominican Republic, then Latvia.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, OGP team. Thank you, Estonia government, twice about the invitation and donate the S-Road platform interoperability. I want to express a concern in Spanish. Why in Spanish? Regarding the mention of the partner of Portugal of ChatGPT. Yo creo que una de las cosas que estamos hablando de gobierno abierto y estamos hablando del uso de tecnologías exponenciales como la inteligencia artificial. En Latinoamérica somos más de 600 millones de ciudadanos que hablamos diferentes tipos de español. La inteligencia artificial funciona con datos y esos datos reflejan y recogen nuestras culturas, nuestros idiomas, nuestro arte, nuestra poesía, las formas en cómo convivimos. Y esa preocupación la expreso aquí porque yo creo que viendo la cara de todos mis compañeros veo la diversidad, pero no veo esa diversidad en el lenguaje. Y la inteligencia artificial, y hablando de transparencia algorítmica, se nutre de nuestro lenguaje. Uno de los grandes problemas que está teniendo hoy el tema de la inteligencia artificial es que no estamos alimentando el algoritmo con nuestro lenguaje. Y hablo en nombre de Latinoamérica, que si tenemos diferentes tipos de formas de hablar el español, diferentes tipos de formas de relacionarnos, como hace Perú, que por ejemplo está desarrollando hoy en quechua para que sus habitantes se puedan representar. En los negocios, claramente el inglés es el idioma de los negocios, pero no así en los servicios públicos. El lenguaje de los servicios públicos tiene que recoger básicamente nuestro lenguaje, nuestra forma en cómo nosotros expresamos. Y yo creo que esta alianza por el gobierno abierto tiene mucho que hacer y mucho que ayudar en cómo nosotros podemos construir esos estándares para garantizar que el algoritmo no genere sesgos, no solamente por razón de género, de raza, sino también en razón de nuestras culturas. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much. I think it's the same comment that Alkags made. I think that's being reinforced. I know I'm just looking at the time. My colleague from Estonia will respond to that in his closing remarks on the language. I will try and take your question at my closing. Latvia.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to Estonia for organizing this event. During the last decade, we in Latvia had a breathtaking journey when making government transparent. First, we opened our doors, making our government meetings public and open to everybody. Next step, we opened our documents. And very recent development we have in place and digital solution assisting for all government agencies, drafting, coordinating, ensuring public consultations with social partners, and adopting all legal acts. And a challenge, what's the next? The challenge we are facing in discussions having whether we can and to what extent use artificial intelligence when speaking about drafting legislation. And that's the issue we have to deal with. Another small aspect, having in mind a shortage of time, so digital inclusiveness, how to ensure and solve a digital skill issue, meaning we are moving more and more to digital solutions, and altogether think how to ensure full digital participation.
Thank you so much. I will not take any other round of questions. I apologize. We have run out of time. Let me quickly hand it over to the government of Estonia, then I'll make the closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. It has been really interesting to listen to these diverse views around the table, because we have this tendency to mainly work, closer circles, and I think one major conclusion we can draw from here is that, to provide good governance for our citizens, dealing with digital issues an absolute must. And it's good news. So we have a reason together again to continue this work also in this forum, in some other beautiful place in the world. And there were actually a lot of interventions where I thought that I want to comment, I want to add something to these conversations, but unfortunately it's not possible. But only one exception I make, and this is on language issues, because there is 1.3 million speakers of Estonian language, and the whole point of this republic is to preserve this culture and this language because we like to be Estonians. And I think we all add to the diversity to the world. So it is very, very instrumental. And in some sense, I'm lucky to hear that this question is also raised by the Spanish-speaking country. There are 475 million native Spanish speakers, and we have the same problems. So we have to solve them collectively. But I also have a good news and comment to the previous comment from the audience that, this all is a big challenge, but there are also opportunities, and especially concerning the large language models. So it is a problem for us from one side, but it is an opportunity in the sense that it helps to work the same methodology, the same technologies help us to work also with our languages. And we are finalizing actually based on these technologies, the first real spelling checker in Estonian. So I can't go into details here, but there are possibilities how to use technologies, and we are happy to share those with you also. So thank you again for coming, and it's been a pleasure to have you. And one more thing I forgot to add, that we have to address this issue in every possible level. I recently had a meeting with Sundar Pichai, who is CEO of Google, and of course they may play a major role also in Estonian ecosystem, because if we build up our Estonia personal assistant, it has to work together with the platforms like this, otherwise people just won't use it. So my call is everybody you meet in these big companies who decide our destinies, bring up the language issue.
Thank you so much from the government of Estonia. To your question on we have to go very quickly. To your question on governing of tech and actually governing the technology, I think there's a lot of movement already now in that conversation. In terms of language, Africa is also not different from Latin America, but I know for sure there's something we are working with the government of the United States. And I think I would hope that you go online and look at the Biden-Harris voluntary commitments, especially with the big AI companies. There are about 7 with Anthropic, Microsoft, Google, and all of those folks, and we're doing something at the margins of the UN General Assembly. Happy that some of you will be part of that conversation around the 3 core issues: safety, security, building public trust. And the building public trust are exactly the issues you're raising, which includes how do you share these big language models and technologies with what you're increasingly calling AI poor countries. And please do not worry, Kenya in its chairmanship is taking over from Estonia, and we are prioritizing digital governance. And so this is not the last place you'll hear this conversation. Hopefully in the next 1 year, we'll bore you with this conversation. And when we reach at the end in the spirit of creation, I think we'll have maybe more questions than answers, and that's okay, because it's still early stage. Thank you so much. for joining us in this roundtable. Give a hand to my panelists. It was really a broad scope of panelists. And to yourselves, and we give you back 1 minute. Thank you so much.
Oh. Oh,